Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. How the devil are you? Have you had a good week? My name is John. Thank you very much for joining me for another exciting Great British Road journey. This week I'm still in Derbyshire, a county that seems to have a lot going on, having benefited from various industries moving to the county during the Industrial Revolution. Sure, today most of that's gone tits up, but some of that old industry draws in tourists from all over, so it's not all bad news. But we are starting in Chesterfield, so it's not all good news either, and our journey will take us to the far end of Derbyshire to a place called Glossop. As always, to help navigate our way around, we'll be using my 1923 Michelin guidebook, period-correct maps, and we start with a fairly well-known landmark. My guidebook suggests we visit Chesterfield's local parish church, which, because of a unique design, is a very well-known and famous landmark. The Church of St Mary and All Saints features a twisted or crooked spire that not only is the sole example in the UK, is the most twisty and crookedy spire in the whole of Europe, where we find 71 other churches like it, but not as good as this one. The big question, of course, is why is it crooked? And the answer is that nobody knows for sure. Shoddy workmanship, a deliberate design intention, added weight with insufficient cross-bracing are all theories, but nothing has been confirmed as to the exact cause or reasoning behind the unique church spire. Chesterfield was once a busy industrial town. However, these days, most of the large-scale industry has moved out to be replaced by housing. And whilst there isn't anything left to see, I did want to mention that Chesterfield was once home to a company known as Markham & Co. They had a huge engineering works here in Chesterfield, and they would manufacture things like tunnel boring machines, one of which was used to dig out the Channel Tunnel. So without a few of the people from Chesterfield in white coats, we wouldn't have that connection to mainland Europe. Let's head out of Chesterfield now, and we'll be picking up the A619, which is fairly unremarkable. However, along the way are a few laybys and odd roads that suggest the road has been straightened out over the years in an effort to make things safer. For example, this access road and this footpath used to be part of the A619. And just up from there is this curved section of roads that used to be the A619, although here you can clearly see where the road used to go before bits of it were removed. And one more, this lay-by, which is no longer the A619. Eventually, you'll end up in the village of Baslow, which is tiny. In the days of my guidebook, there were only around 850 people living here. Today, it's around 1,200, so still tiny. My guidebook, surprisingly, does make a few suggestions on things to see or do, but none of them are in Baslow. For example, Middleton Dale, which is about 4 miles from Baslow. My guidebook promises a picturesque walk. However, at this location, we also find the very easily accessible Horseshoe Quarry. And I like a quarry. This one used to dig out limestone that formed 300 million years ago. And apparently, as a result of blasting out the rock, they revealed fossilised coral that had also formed millions of years ago. Quarrying activity would come to an end here in 1969, and the site would sit about not being used for a little while. But in 1980, the British Mountaineering Council would get involved to repurpose the site as a climbing venue. Fun fact, on the other side of the road is Dalton Quarry. Same sort of thing, but this was the location used for the train stunt in one of Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible films. That little quarry visit took us off-piste somewhat, so we'll head back through Baslow, pick up the A619 and continue our journey. But it isn't long before we're to make another stop as we arrive in the next village, or town. Welcome to Bakewell, where if you're English, the only thing that matters is that it's the home of the Bakewell tart or Bakewell pudding. Usually when I film food-related stuff, the shops are shut by the time I turn up and I end up cutting it all out of the video. Today, that could still happen, but Bakewell has 3 shops that claim to sell the traditional Bakewell tart, so let's give it a go. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. What the f*** is a Bakewell tart? It's a variation of the Bakewell pudding. Obviously, idiots. All right, fine. It's a short crust pastry with an almond and jam topping, and there's some sponge thrown in there somewhere. Not to be confused with this piss-poor attempt, these are not the same as the traditional Bakewell tart, which is not the same as the traditional Bakewell pudding, the difference there being the types of pastry used. Anyway, it doesn't matter. If you hear the name Bakewell tart or Bakewell pudding, it comes from here, and I've got one, and it's bloody lovely. No. At this point, I'm just dropping in a voiceover so we can take a moment to appreciate some of the stunning scenery that passes you by as you drive along the A6. Yep, I'll see you in Buxton. Where my guidebook mentions something odd, under Buxton it says, "Note, please drive carefully through the neighbourhood." All right, what's it got to do with you? Anyway, Buxton is said to be the highest market town in the country at a whopping 1,000 feet above sea level. It sat on a geothermal spring, so for a time it was a spa town, and its water is collected up and sold by Nestle as Buxton water. My guidebook suggests maybe we'd like to visit the Devonshire Hospital, specifically to enjoy the architectural marvel that's known as the Devonshire Dome, originally part of a stable built in the 1700s. Wait, this was a stable? That's a bit over the top, isn't it? When it was built, it was the largest unsupported dome in the world at 44.2 metres across, a record that has since been beaten, but it's still the largest structure of its type in the UK. It was actually converted from a stable to a hospital in 1880, and it continued as such until the year 2000, at which point the hospital closed. But the building still lives on today because it's now part of the University of Derby. A short distance to the north of Buxton is a town known as On Le Frith. Stupid name, but a town famous for the Ferodo brand of braking friction parts. Perhaps you've used some of their stuff. They've been going for ages, having been founded in 1897, but the factory here in On Le Frith wouldn't come until 1902, and I think it's fair to say that Ferodo have pioneered modern brake friction technology, if you will, and in the early days their brake pads were full of asbestos. Oh, as we've come to learn and realise, asbestos is nasty stuff, but back in the old days, they didn't know any better, and this would nearly bankrupt the company in the early 2000s, following claims of asbestosis from several previous workers. What is asbestosis? It's a you up inflammation and scarring of the lungs as a result of inhaling asbestos dust with complications such as lung cancer. Awesome! And there's no way to treat it, so yeah. A lot of compensation payouts have been made over the years. Still, good breaks though. As we head to our final destination, we'll do so using the A624, which will take us directly into the centre of Glossop. The road hasn't changed all that much and makes for a leisurely drive through the countryside. However, when passing through Hayfield, to stick to the period correct route and road, we'll need to turn right because the village was bypassed. I say bypassed, a more modern road was slammed through the middle, but for us we'll make our way through Hayfield using the old road, and since we're not stopping here, this is pointless. Speaking of pointless, Glossop. I don't know why we came here. My guidebook says there's a golf course here. Brilliant. What else? 21,000 residents. In 1923. Why? And what were they doing all day long? Cotton milling and printing, it turns out. Glossop was once home to the largest calico print works in the world that opened in 1825. Calico printing is a technique that allows for the quick printing of several colours or patterns using a roller to print, although the technique comes from India. We sort of stole the idea. Anyway, today it's all gone. It's the same situation for the cotton industry. However, there is the odd reminder of what was once a huge industry for Glossop. Now redeveloped, this is or was Red Nest Mill, a cotton spinning mill that dates back to 1815. Whilst today it's fairly unique, back then it would have been one of several mills in Glossop because it turns out that Glossop's climate is well suited to the cotton industry. It's a bit damp, and that's good for cotton and fibres and threads and stuff. At least that's what the internet says. Anyway, today it's all gone. All of the large-scale industries have moved out, and that might be why Glossop is experiencing a population decrease, which is very rare indeed. There were 21,000 people living here in 1923, and today 18,000. And there we are then, guys. That's all we've got time for this week. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, there is of course a button specifically for that, and if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. That would be wicked sweet, awesome. Enjoy the rest of your week, whatever it is you get up to. My name's John. You've been watching Auto Shenanigans, and I'll see you guys next time for another exciting Great British Road Journey. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.